How do you know if your business idea or offer is actually going to work? Have you ever felt like it's throwing spaghetti at the walls when you're trying to create offers and hope that they sell? Maybe you have a lot of expertise in what you do, but when it comes to translating that into what people actually want, the service that would actually fit for them, you either get flooded with ideas and then get overwhelmed because there's just so much to do, or you draw a blank, or maybe you've actually tried some of your ideas and they just have not worked as well as you thought that they would. I'd like to help you solve that problem in this video. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a direction and a plan and a next step that you can take to gather the data that you need in order to create something that people actually want to buy from you. And before we get started, my name is Elizabeth Cunningham. I've been an entrepreneur since 2017. I have been unsuccessful in some businesses and I've been very successful in other businesses. And I'm currently in an entrepreneurial MBA program. So I'm also going deeper into what more I can learn so that I can not only make my businesses better, but I've also started to teach other people how to grow their own service-based businesses. And I want to get better at teaching too, which is also why I started this YouTube channel. I most often work with people who are queer or non-monogamous or sex positive. That's the general realm that I've been in, but these entrepreneurial business tools could be applied to other businesses as well. So without further ado, let's hop in. So we're going to talk about market research conversations, and I want to get really clear about what I mean when I say market research conversations. And I also want to touch on what an offer is, just so we're really clear about what is an offer as well. But mainly we're going to talk about market research conversations in this video. In this context, a market research conversation is a conversation to discover who your potential customer is, what the main problem or challenge that they're facing is, and what they are willing to do to solve this problem. And to be very clear, in this video, I'm going to teach you how to have this conversation in a relationship building way. No one is going to feel interrogated, and if you do this well, then the people that you're speaking to will actually feel more connected. And even if they don't become a client, perhaps they will refer you to someone else. And just really quickly, what is an offer? So an offer in a service-based business is a structured solution that packages your specific skills, time, and expertise into a compelling value proposition to solve your target client's problem. It dictates what you do, who it is for, how it is delivered, and how much it costs. My main business has been in queer and non-monogamous relationship coaching, so an offer in that business would be a workshop for better communication to have healthier relationship skills in your queer and non-monogamous relationships. That's an offer, right? We know what the problem is. They're struggling with their conversations. We know who it's for. It's specifically for queer and non-monogamous people. We know how it is delivered. It's delivered in a workshop. And if I had a landing page for it, then it would show the time and how long it was and what the cost of it would be. So that is an example of an offer. A massage is an example of a service-based offer. Painting a house is an example of a service-based offer, right? So that's what an offer is. And in my last video, I talked about the importance of picking a niche and how that is very helpful and in a lot of ways necessary to have a really solid offer. So if you want to check that video out, I believe it's on this side of the screen. So once you know your niche, you have this specific group of people that you are talking to, that you're building this offer for. Now you need to be able to talk to them and discover what they will actually buy from you. And the first point here is you can't just go up to someone and be like, hey, will you buy this thing? Would you come to this workshop if I offered it? Because usually, if you're that direct and you're also speaking in a hypothetical, like, would you do this thing? Then most of the time, people are just going to be nice to you. They're going to be polite about it. They're going to be like, oh, wow, like, that sounds really interesting. Or they might genuinely be excited about it, but genuine excitement doesn't dictate people actually taking action when that thing happens, right? So if you're like, oh, so many people were excited about it, and then you set up this workshop and it's a $50 workshop, and you're like, oh, hey, I set up this workshop, it's $50. And people are like, oh man, I don't know, the time doesn't work, or, well, I don't know, $50, like, all of a sudden there's all of these reasons why they can't come to this thing even though they were excited about it beforehand, and that's because you didn't discover what their actual problem was. Like, you were more excited about your offer than you were curious about what they are dealing with and what's important to them and what they'll actually do about that. So a real life example of this is that I had some friends of mine who started an ultimate Frisbee indoor gym. And when I say they started this gym, I mean they actually got the space, rented it, got equipment, renovated the space for it. Like, they poured time and effort and energy and money into this gym. And the reason that they did that is because they were ultimate Frisbee players, and they saw that one of the things that was really challenging was that there wasn't indoor practice space. And so they were talking to other people in the ultimate Frisbee world and being like, oh, well, what if we did this? And and people were so excited about it. And they were like, oh my God, if we had that, it'd be so cool. I would totally sign up for that. That would be amazing. All of that. Like, they got all the hype for it. And so they did. They poured all this time and effort and energy and money into it. But guess what? When push came to shove and they were like, hey, we opened this gym, we actually did it, very few people actually signed up for it because they were going off of the hype of the hypothetical rather than what people would actually pay money for, the behavior that they would actually exhibit around that. And so oftentimes what people will say they will do versus what they will actually do are two different things. And we all do that. Like, this is not to judge people or to knock people or anything like that. It's just to recognize that's something that happens. And if we're trying to build a business, we need to reconcile that, right? So this is a way to reconcile this and learning how to have better conversations around this. So I want to give you the tools so that you are having conversations that are gathering real information. And these conversations can really happen anytime, anywhere, with anyone. It doesn't have to be formal. It should not feel like a formal, like, interview, or like, definitely shouldn't feel like an interrogation or anything like that. If you're doing these conversations really well, it really should feel like a curious and compassionate conversation that you're having with someone. And if you want a resource that you can dive deeper into in this, and I'm not affiliated with this at all, this is just a good book for this specific topic, and that's called The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. And it's a pretty easy read. I think it's like a 3-hour audio book, so just like a really long podcast. And it's very digestible as well. And he gives a lot of really great examples of having these conversations and different scenarios and having these conversations. So if you want something that's a little bit more in depth to supplement this video, then that's a really good one as well. So the main points that you want to hit in having these kind of covert market research conversations is being intentional about if people have the problem that you're trying to solve and what they have done to try and solve this problem. And the reason why we want to understand if they already have this problem in the first place is we're not going to get good information if they don't have this problem. We want to avoid hypotheticals. We want to avoid people just agreeing with you. We want to avoid just like shooting the shit conversations, right? We want to be actually talking to someone about a real problem that they're experiencing or have experienced. And the other reason why we want to do that is because ideally ideally, we're also trying to find potential customers here. So if they don't have the problem that you're trying to solve, then they're not a potential customer. And the reason why we want to ask questions around what they have done to solve this problem is we want to focus on their behavior rather than what they think. Remember the ultimate Frisbee gym, right? We want to get more in depth about what is the behavior around trying to solve this problem rather than what are their thoughts and opinions about this problem. And if they have taken action to solve this problem in the past, especially if they've taken action and paid for something, like even paid for a book, paid for a service, paid for a class, paid for a workshop, paid for a product, then we can make an assumption that they might likely pay for something again. Great, so now understanding all of that, what are some questions that we can actually ask, and how could this conversation actually look, or how could it actually go? The pro tip here is to ask what and why questions. You want to think about it in those terms. So let's break this conversation down into 2 stages. The first stage is identifying if they are in your niche and have this problem. And the second stage is identifying their behavior in trying to solve this problem. So if they are a yes in stage 1, they are part of your niche, they do have this problem, then moving on to stage 2, what's their behavior around this problem? What actions have they taken around it? And just to be very clear, this conversation is not about getting them to sign up for anything. This conversation is data gathering. So take the pressure off of yourself and take the pressure off of this conversation that there has to be any sort of like switch to then getting them on a phone call with you, unless it becomes abundantly appropriate and, the opening is there to do that in this conversation. I'm not saying, don't ever do that, but that's not the point of this conversation. Okay, so stage 1, identifying if they have the problem that you are trying to solve. The niche that we're going to use as an example for this is queer women who want healthier relationships. And if you do have a niche like this one that I'm using as an example, where the topic is a lot more tender, vulnerable, sensitive, really leading with curiosity, compassion, and even at certain points asking for consent. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, but is this okay? We don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, not imposing yourself on people, really, being with them in the conversation. So the conversation could start off how's your dating life? And if they're having troubles or problems in this area, they might roll their eyes, or they might make a joke about it, oh yeah, dating, right? Or whatever it is that they say. And just be with them in the flow of the conversation. Maybe make a joke back, oh man, it's that bad, huh? Then you could get more curious, how long have you been dating or looking for a relationship? So this is still a curious question, but it's also a data gathering question. Essentially, it's how long have you had this problem? But it's curious. How long have you been dating or looking for a new relationship? And then, if the conversation progresses, you could get even more curious, what are you looking for in a relationship? What have you found challenging in dating or relationships? What's sucked about it could be a really good question to really understand, what's really shitty here? What's the problem? You are asking the question, what is the problem you're having? But it's asking it in a normal human connecting way. Maybe you could ask, what do you love about it? Do you like being single? And if they don't want to talk about it, just say something like, if you don't want to talk about this, if you don't have to, I'm just being nosy. So things like that, where you're asking normal questions, but you're also discovering how long they've been dealing with this issue, what the problem's been for them, what's been challenging for them, what's really sucked about it for them, or maybe even what's going well for them. One of the points of this is to look for emotional responses. And so anytime that someone gets really emotional or passionate about something, really getting more curious about that. Because when people are emotional about something, then that means that they really care about it, or it really is a big deal for them. And so really getting more curious about that aspect. So if you've gotten this far in the conversation and you realize, okay, in this example, this is a queer woman and they're wanting to have healthier relationships and they really are struggling in this area of their life, then moving on to stage 2, which is identifying their behavior in trying to solve this problem. So this can be a little bit more intimate and vulnerable in service-based businesses. So I want to give you a couple of ways that you can open up the conversation in a way that, again, still feels good and connecting and not like you're prying into people's business and they don't want you to. So one approach that I use is to share things that I have done or share things that have worked or not worked for me, because then it stays a two-sided conversation as well. It's not just, you asking them questions about this challenging area of their life. It's also about sharing the experience with them, like, oh yeah, like this is something that I've tried, or this is something that's been really helpful for me. Like for myself in this scenario, I have taken classes, I have gotten coaching, I have gone to therapy before for this area of my life. And so I might share that with this person. And when you open it up in that way, it also gives them the floor to share what they have done, what they've liked about that, or what they don't like. If I share like, oh yeah, like, well, I've gotten coaching around this, and maybe they'd be like, oh wow, coaching, like I would never do that. That's really good information, especially as a relationship coach. I'd be like, okay, this is actually not a potential customer for me. Now we're just shooting the shit about dating, and that's totally fine. Or if they'd be like, oh, like relationship coaching, oh, that's interesting, I've never tried that before, maybe they get curious about it with me and I could share a little bit more about it with them, right? So when you open up and be vulnerable in the space, then it often leads to them opening up and being a little bit more vulnerable about what's working for them and what's not working for them. And it also makes it more natural to continue to be curious and ask questions. So if they do say something like, oh, yeah, I've been really curious about relationship coaching, you can be like, oh, what have you been curious about with it? Like, what have you looked into about it? You can continue to ask those questions that are a little bit deeper, and it's a natural progression of the conversation. Again, it's not an interrogation of this person and their behavior. And then that also opens up to asking about well, what have you tried, or what have you been wanting to try, or is there anything that you're looking into right now? Well, would be an appropriate question to ask in this context, right? Because now in the progression of the conversation, it is appropriate to say something like, oh, well, what have you tried around dating? Where if you opened with that, what have you tried around solving your shitty dating life? People, that's not a socially appropriate question to ask. But if you have a curious and interested conversation with someone, then that could be a natural question that comes up. So if they indicate that this is something that they have taken action on in the past, you could say when did you do that? What had you choose the person or the service that you did? What were you looking for? Or what were the signals for you that was the thing that would really help you? What really worked for you about it? And would you do it again in your current situation? Would you consider trying that again? And after having this conversation, you've probably gathered a lot of data about someone who's in your potential market. And if you've done this really well, then you've made a connection or deepened a connection that you already have. And then this person could potentially work with you, or maybe they would refer you. And if you've done this conversation really well, then perhaps you've helped another human just by listening to them and being curious about them and their world. And that is the goal, that this person leaves this conversation feeling listened to rather than studied they were just in a market research conversation. Then as soon as possible after this conversation, write everything down, and write it down as succinctly as possible. So the problem that they were having was, how long they've had this problem is, what some other factors in their life are, what they have tried to do to solve this problem is, what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them is this, and what they got really emotional about or really passionate about is this. And try to write this down in as close to their words as possible. So if you heard them say different words or phrases over and over again, that is really good to know. Okay, so that is how to have a market research conversation in a human and relational way to gather data about what your target market is actually dealing with and what they're willing to do about that. So in my next video, I am going to talk about how we can take that data, how we can take that information and actually create an offer that sells, and how to test it in a reasonable way and not be like our, poor friends with the Frisbee gym. But rather be be a business owner who can test things incrementally using an efficient amount of time and energy rather than doing these blowout things that may or may not result in what people actually want to buy from you. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos, and you help my channel grow so that more of this information can reach the right people. And if you want to, you can sign up for my newsletter. The link for that is below as well. And I would love to hear your takeaways and actions in the comment of this video. Information is great, but taking action is actually what is going to make the difference for you. So let's hold each other accountable. Put your takeaways and actions in the comment section below. All right. I love y'all, and until the next video, bye.